My name is Tom Larmandra. This is my wife Laura, and this is our story. I grew up a Christian, was always in church. My dad was a leader at our church. Becoming an adult, I just expected that I'd get married early, but God had other plans. Took me a while, and Laura and I got married when I was 39.
And I was 35. I didn't grow up in a Christian home, but I grew up as a Christian from the time I was 16, went to a Bible college, served in ministries, so always been a faithful follower.
We both, our whole lives, had poured into children. Laura was a teacher. I was a proud uncle, and just expected that early in our marriage that we would have children.
A few months after we got married, found out we were pregnant unexpectedly, but we were thrilled. And then go to our first appointment, and things didn't go that great. I remember the words cautiously optimistic. They said at our first ultrasound, and so we had to follow up again in a few weeks. But before we even made it to that next appointment, we had our first miscarriage.
After we lost our first child, I wasn't prepared for that emotionally. My faith wasn't strong enough. Up until that stage, my faith was very childlike. For the good and for the bad, I just expected that good things would happen. And even if they were delayed, they would continue to happen. So it was a real test to my faith, even going through that first loss.
Found out shortly after that we were pregnant with our son, Gabriel. Everything was a picture-perfect pregnancy. And I remember with our first miscarriage, they're like, it's 33% chance that happens, and your next pregnancy is likely to be fine. And so when we went through all of the scans and anatomy scans and all of that, and everything was great, we just assumed that everything was going to be normal from that point on. And so we made it close to the end of that pregnancy when we found out that he was gone.
And I'll be honest, even at that time, I was still kind of confident. The earlier loss was early. With Gabriel, we could feel him kicking, we could feel him moving. We knew that he was in there. We got pictures of him through the ultrasound. And I was actually coming back from a soccer tournament, and Laura said, I've not felt him moving in a while. And
so we went to the hospital. They did an ultrasound and found out that he had passed. And but we were obviously so far along, we had to go through actual delivery. And they gave me an epidural and had to sit through 36 hours of waiting for him to come. And I just remember having to sit in that hospital bed with my thoughts for 36 hours. And then he came, and we said our goodbyes. And at that point, it was just the raw grief that kind of we were dealing with. I wasn't really thinking about our future of our family, just kind of sitting in the grief of losing our son.
I was scared. I was scared not only about our right now, but I was scared about our future, because the dream, what we had both anticipated would be our life, it didn't look like it was happening.
I remember being really sad, but I also remember being very angry. Some of the best advice that I got in that time was just don't stop talking to God. Be sad, be angry, shout at him, whatever you need to do, but just don't stop talking to him. There were some times that I just couldn't, I just didn't understand. And we were praying, and, just felt like we were doing all the right things, but, he was still gone.
My anger was palpable. As a man, I wanted to be able to protect and provide for not only my wife, but my child. My grief quickly turned to anger, and how could you do this to me? How could you do this to us? After all that we have believed, and you compare to other people, and these people have kids and they don't even want their child, right? We desperately want to be able to have children to play with, and although we knew for eternity that we are parents, even at that stage, I didn't have Gabriel to play with. I didn't have a child, and I never stopped believing, but I did not trust in his promises at that stage.
The next 2 years or so that followed were just the darkest. We had 3 more miscarriages, and each one just ripped open the wounds every time. And it was during that point for me that I was like, this family that I had always dreamed of was never going to happen.
Normally you get as a husband, as a dad, you get the news from your wife, hey, we're pregnant, and you're excited and it's great news. And that was what happened for the first one. It's not what happens for the ones after. It is immediate dread. And then you go into the doctor's office, and even at the stages when we didn't know if things were good or bad, you're sitting at the ultrasound and the text says, let me go get the doctor. And that's not good news.
With all our pregnancies prior to that point, we never told anybody that we were pregnant. For our 6th pregnancy, it was kind of like, here we go again. And I remember going to a small group, and I was just like 4 weeks pregnant maybe, and I was like, what the heck, might as well share. And so I told the ladies there that we were pregnant again, and just like, hey, can you guys pray? But it was kind of like that. Can you guys pray? Like, not sure if it's going to make any difference, because we've been praying for each one. But I will never forget Peggy Dickey. Many of you might know her. Prayed the most beautiful prayer, and she talked about in her prayer, she talked about how we need to forget the past, and that God was doing a new thing, and that He would make a way in the wilderness, and that kind of became the theme of that pregnancy. Was just God was doing a new thing, and that we had to believe that, and that's what we prayed.
David and some of the elders laid hands on me and prayed for me. And I'd never shown that kind of emotion in front of other men before, and it just took over me. I was amazed, and I believe that prayer works 100%, but I was not expecting what it would do to me to have other men see me in my weakness and realize that there was nothing that I could do, that we needed God to make this miracle.
So we rallied prayer, and we had our family praying for us. I had friends in Ohio praying for us, staff from the school that I was working in praying for us. We had neighbors praying for us. We had a specific neighbor, she's not with us anymore, but I just remember every walk that I took our dog on, she'd see me and she's like, I'm praying for that baby. And just knowing that this baby was like 100% covered in prayer. And we just had a very different outlook. We still were pessimistic at times. Every doctor's appointment, we were waiting, okay, we're waiting for that shoe to drop. And then it didn't. and then we would go to the next one. And so while we were believing, we were still kind of waiting for the bad thing. Going into delivering Drew, he was a scheduled delivery since we had complications in the past, and so they gave us induction, and it was taking a long time for him to come. And we got, I don't know, maybe 16 hours in, and as we would get closer, his heart rate would drop, and it was pretty dramatic delivery process. After 36 hours, they decided that it was probably best if we have a C-section. And I just remember the terror of all of that. Just, this wasn't going as we hoped, and just being really nervous going into delivery.
Given what we had been through, that optimism that I was trying to hold on to was failing at that stage, because I just needed to be able to hold this baby in my arms and have him be delivered.
Turns out that he had the umbilical cord wrapped around his neck 3 times. I ended up needing 2 transfusions. This was not like I dreamed. You dream of the beautiful, an embrace and all the things, and it was just, the room was just chaos. So we were blessed. We got to take Drew home. We call him our miracle baby, and such a blessing. And there was always this feeling, though, of like our family didn't feel complete. But I was like, we're just gonna have to live with that feeling, because he's it. Like, we can't go through this roller coaster again, because even if it's a healthy pregnancy, I can't handle the turmoil of that. The couple years that followed were also very dark. 6 months after Drew was born, my mom passed away unexpectedly. And then about 6 or so months after that, my dad was diagnosed with blood cancer. And then about 6 months later, he passed away.
In the first days of 2018, my dad died. And my dad was a healthy man, and he was very active in Drew's life.
After we went through the losses of our, both of my parents and his dad, it was kind of like all that darkness kind of coming back in. So it's like, it's almost like Drew should have been, the end of our story and this perfect, beautiful ending. And even when we may not feel it, God is there and God is part of this whole process.
So about 6 months after my dad died, we were still in a place where we were feeling pretty dark and broken from all of the loss, even though we had Drew with us. But I came home from work and walked in the door, and Laura said, "I'm pregnant." And I was like, what? That was not something that we had expected. It was not in our plans.
And we talk all the time that, Drew was our miracle baby. Xander was just a pure gift, something we were not looking for, asking for, just a gift.
It's something that if we were drawing up what we wanted, if we were saying what our plan was, that would have been our plan when we first got married. It was not our plan based on fear, based on our anxiety.
Super nervous because how everything went with Drew, and we still had this element of waiting for the shoe to drop. And so we get to the end, and he was going to be a scheduled C-section. I remember we prayed for an angel to be present with us in the delivery room, and we show up and found out our nurse's name was Angel, and she was amazing. We had just the most amazing people in that delivery, and even though it was C-section, I couldn't have dreamt for a more beautiful birth experience.
Yeah, I'll be honest, there's times when I still long for that childlike faith where I just have all the confidence in the world. You want to have that full confidence that everything's great, but honestly, the faith that I have now is more hardened. It's more tested. It's come through the fire, so that any darkness, and there have been trials that you go through, that seem minuscule in comparison to that. But when I look at that experience, it helps me to understand a little bit better God's view. It's like, oh, if you could only see things from my point of view, then you would understand this so much better. And so there are times when I just have to give it up to that I don't have the capacity to understand. Understanding that this little piece of our life is a relatively short amount compared to eternity. And that is what is critical. And so knowing that we will have all of our children together one day has been really helpful, even in those dark moments before Drew was born.
Looking back, definitely saw how God made something beautiful from really dark time. And that's not just our boys, because we weren't guaranteed that Drew and Xander were going to be here. I see all the ways that God has taken our experience and done beautiful things with it. Being able to sit with a friend that has gone through a similar experience and hold their hand, and they know that I know how they're feeling. God can take this miserable experience and just this dark place and turn it to something good.
I have realized that I am weak, and that's not something anybody wants to be, but I realize how much the control isn't mine to have. And that although I've always been a Christian as far as I can recall to my early childhood, my understanding of what it means to be a follower of Christ and to pursue Him every day is changed through this process.
Going through that dark time and just coming out on the other end and knowing that our faith was really put to the test and we came out on the other side.
No matter what comes, no matter the pain that you might be going through, the pain that we might go through, challenges are going to come, trials are going to come. I don't believe that God causes those trials, but I know that He can make good things happen because of those trials. And if our experience has taught me anything, it's that we just need to trust that God's plan is greater than anything that we have in mind.